Private. All right,
All
yeah,
right,
we're live.
we're live. All right. Hello, everyone. Grace and peace. I am back again. And obviously, we have a special guest. Obviously, you guys can tell from the thumbnail, and it's obviously an exciting video. Obviously, eschatology. Eschatology is an exciting topic. It can end relationships. Yeah, relationships. Yeah, I'm getting tongue tied. I'm like trying to survive off of Red Bull and Coca-Cola tonight. I don't know why. I had a long day at work. Anyway, so yeah, eschatology. So we are talking about obviously me and River Devereux. Actually, let me first let him introduce himself. River, do you mind introduce yourself? Also, do you mind being called Deacon River, Brother River, or just River?
Just call
Or
me River.
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, well,
Yeah.
actually
Hi.
introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm River Devereux. I'm a deacon in the Church of Confessing Anglicans of New Zealand. I am a Kiwi, as you can tell from my accent. I run a channel called New Kingdom Media, and yeah, thanks, man, for bringing me on. It's good to see you. Good to talk to you.
Good to have you on,
Yeah.
and it's a pleasure to finally be able to dialogue with you in this manner. Obviously, you are across the world, so it's very hard to. Well, for me, I find it very difficult just to even schedule a meeting time. Even just
Yeah.
texting, like it's kind of like obviously you have to wait a couple hours just for a response because obviously you could be sleeping, you could be different time.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I went I did the Anglican roundtable I had on my channel I think a couple months ago. No, beginning of the year. It was with Paul, the other Paul. Obviously he's in Australia, and then someone Peter brother, he's in England, and then a couple other brothers in the U.S. But I think one of them was in a different time zone. So trying to get all that scheduled
Yeah. That would have
was
been
very
tough.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, glad to be here. And if there's any questions from the audience, if there's time at the end of the after all is said and done, and River wants to answer any questions, feel free to
Yeah.
put a Q in the chat and ask away. Like I said, if there's time at the end. So River, tell us about your ministry. You have anything going on lately on your ministry wise, church wise, even on your YouTube channel wise?
Yeah, I've just wrapped up doing a live stream series called Defending Christianity. I enjoyed doing that. Got I think 9 videos, mainly defending Christianity against objections like the problem of suffering, the problem of evil. That was a lot of fun. And the most recent videos I've done that weren't live stream is I did 2 videos about ecclesial anxiety and interdenominational apologetics and some of the problems and that whole scene and how it causes ecclesial anxiety in people. And then coming up, starting next week, I'm going to be doing a new live stream series called Forgotten Christianity, where I'll be talking about aspects of the New Testament and early church fathers that have largely been ignored or rejected or forgotten today. So the first one will be controversial. It's going to be looking at how the New Testament and the early church fathers were essentially teaching anarcho-socialism. That'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, that's gonna be that. And then in real life, I'm the pastor of St. Timothy's Anglican Church. We're a 1662 Book of Common Prayer congregation, and yeah, so I preach every week, run Bible studies every week, and pastor people. So I got my hands full, along with a wife and 2 kids. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I always wonder how clergymen can juggle family, church life, and also a YouTube channel. While
With
putting
great
out,
difficulty.
yeah, especially
Yeah.
content like that goes into extent, like anything over an hour. Like I don't know how you guys study and prep for that.
Yeah.
But so and guys, let me know if my audio is good. This is a new mic for me. My other mic is broken at this, so I'm in the process of getting a new one. So I'm just using this little tiny mic that was gifted to me. I'm very grateful. It was gifted by my brother, so thankful for that. So River, what got you into historic premillennialism? What were you before, if you were any before?
I've never held on to eschatological positions too strongly. But before I was historic premill, I guess I was post mill. I came under the influence of that whole like Doug Wilson post-mill crowd.
Yeah.
But I've always had the heart and the intuition of a pre-mill guy. You know, I've always had a bit of a pessimistic view of the way things are and the way things are going. And I've never been able to shake the vibe I get from the New Testament and the church fathers that we're supposed to see the world as something oppressive, that we are going to continue to be oppressed by until the end. And that was always my sort of instinct. But I kind of held to post-mill just because of a number of like the passages they bring up that seem to teach post-mill and all of that. And I guess I fell under the influence of that whole sort of ideology, that Christian nationalist post-mill kind of thing, which I've since moved away from, not entirely, but I wouldn't see myself as sort of fitting under that umbrella anymore. And but then what happened was, I think I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was like 2 years ago-ish. I really wanted to deep dive read the church fathers properly, just like from start to finish, like start off the apostolic fathers and get into the, I guess I ended with Augustine, so that kind of time period, and just read them. So I got the books, you know, I got the collections of their writings and just poured over them. And it just became pretty undeniable that they were pre-mill up until a certain period when that starts to fizzle out. And the other thing that jumped out to me is how intricate their pre-mill theology was, and a lot of them are teaching a very specific view of pre-mill that it's like, wow, where are they all getting that from? That's so specific. It doesn't look like these are all different people speculating and happening to come up with the same conclusion. It looks like they're all teaching something that maybe tradition has passed on, maybe an apostolic tradition, and that started to make me think a bit more. And then, yeah, I guess I've always, since I came back to Christianity, like, I don't know how long that ago was now, like 10 years ago. I've always really wanted to follow the early church. And, you know, here on YouTube, that's very trendy. Everyone wants to be an early church guy, right? So you got the Roman Catholics, we follow the early church. And you got the Orthodox, we follow the early church. And you've even got Protestants, like, we follow the early. And everyone's saying that. And I want to do that too. But I think the early church just don't teach what a lot of people think they teach, you know? And that's that series I'm doing on my channel coming up. Like, another thing that jumps out to you pretty clearly, you can't read the church fathers very long and not figure out that they're anarcho-socialists, which is putting it mildly, more like anarcho-communists. And anarcho being the emphasis there. They're not saying the state should force it, but yeah. Right. But it's like, and their eschatology, it's like they have this, they're just not post-mill, you know, they're not. And when it comes to Revelation, a lot of people have this view that all of Revelation up until, I guess, I don't know, chapter 20 or 21 has already happened, right? It's already been fulfilled in AD 70. You'd think that the guys who lived through that, the Judeo-Roman War, would have had that view, but they didn't. So you've got apostolic fathers, some of whom quite likely lived through the Judeo-Roman War, thinking that Revelation hasn't happened yet. And that's got to give you pause, because if they're all expected to have known that Revelation was to be fulfilled in AD 70, why are they all saying, no, this is going to be in the future? That's worth noting.
Right.
So, there was that. And then I guess I just reconsidered some scriptural stuff. And that kind of made me go pre-mill. But then the other thing that happened is just looking at some historical events, and some of what the church fathers were predicting would happen at a certain period of time, which looks to be this time, started happening. So you've got all this stuff about possible construction of the third temple and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, that's pretty weird, right? So I'm sure we'll get all to this into the video, but that's kind of
definitely, answer. No, even like that, talk about the third temple and stuff like that. Like, I'll even hear like even some Eastern Orthodox go that, use that language whenever we're talking about like the coming of the Antichrist or anything eschatology. Where like it's interesting. So like I always wonder like are they historic female or are they all male or I mean I mean I don't know. Um,
They
so
Orthodox don't like to be boxed into anything, so they're
yeah,
hard to
I
pin
know.
down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the minute you tell them, "Oh wait, that's this," and you're like, "But wait, no, it's not that," and then like they go on
But
different.
I'm okay with that. I mean, like being pre-mill, we don't want to be boxed in too much because if someone
Right?
says
Yeah.
pre-mill, that I'm not a dispensationalist. I don't want to.
Right.
I'm not in the same camp as those guys.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I do find it a little annoying and like maybe a little bit cringe. This whole like thing in online Christian spaces of like I'm historic pre-mill. I'm
Mm.
a partial preterist post-millennial. Like it's like
It does get old quick.
it's
Like the
like
whole
this
label and like
club.
being proud of the labels. Yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah.
rough.
Everyone comes with like a little name tag. I'm River, and I'm a historic premillennialist. It's just a little like
To be
a
honest,
bit
and this is
dorky.
going. Some of the my reform friends will get probably mad at me. Like a lot of that comes from like like you mentioned the post mill Christian nationalist Doug Wil. I'm not saying Doug Wilson, but I'm saying like
That whole thing, yeah,
that whole thing. Like oh, I'm a cigar smoking post mill and
yeah, yeah.
and
But
just like,
people enjoy labels. They there's people who make jokes about I'm like I'm a partial preterist post millennial Christian nationalist.
oh man, yeah,
Like they every label they can think of, they'll like stick it in.
yep,
Uh, yeah, just like I don't know. I just find it a
yeah.
bit
It gets
cringe.
tiring quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
The church
So,
fathers weren't like, I'm a historic primo. What are you? They're just, yeah. Anyway.
yeah. No, I get you. Yeah, I definitely agree. So and you kind of mentioned before how your view, like you mentioned, not being boxed in. So how does your view differ from other historic pre-mill? Um, you can give some examples. I even give my examples. Obviously, I share with you uh privately, obviously, where I view more of we are in the tribulation, and I lean
Mhm.
optimistic towards the end, but not lean. I no pun intended. I hope for an optimistic,
Mhm.
and but I do see that we are in the tribulation now, and where if it could get worse to where a certain period of time in towards the end before Christ's return, that can be viewed as within this tribulation, the Great Tribulation kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and obviously, you would disagree with that. So yeah. So what are your views that you would think that this differs from majority of historic
Okay,
premillennialism?
well, it's probably easy to start with the agreement. So I
Mm,
believe that Christ is Lord.
mm,
He's King of everything. But for now, the world is still under the oppression of elemental spirits and archons who, or these, stoicheia, the principalities and powers and stuff,
right.
and then the ruler of the world, uh, the devil. And so, until that is resolved, there's still the world is still against us, and so we're like, you know, we're like behind enemy lines essentially.
Hmm.
And then I think that's going to come to a head with a great tribulation, which hasn't happened yet, I don't think. And I think that it's going to last either 7 or 3.5 years. And I think the tribulation will revolve around the state of Israel and the the land of Palestine. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to build a third temple, which will be an antichrist abomination because Jesus is the true temple. The Jewish, who they think the Messiah is, will come. He will actually, in fact, be the Antichrist. There'll be a period of horrific suffering, and that's all going to come tumbling down. The temple will be destroyed. The Antichrist, who they think is the Messiah, will be killed. And what will then happen is that all of the Jews who had followed all that stuff and thought, we got the third temple, we've got the Messiah, blah blah blah, they're going to come to their senses and realize that Jesus is the Messiah. And
Hmm.
then there will be a mass conversion of Jews, and then Jesus returns because the story has reached, well, that story has reached its completion in this of the unbelief of the Jews. I think that's what we're all waiting for. Is it's like we're waiting for the Jews. We're waiting for Abraham's ethnic descendants to finally embrace their Messiah. And the devil, the god of this world, has blinded their eyes, but that's going to come to a close. They'll all convert. Jesus will come back. Now, then, as for the millennium, I don't take the view of the millennium where he rebuilds the temple and you have like this fleshly view of the millennium where, he restores
animal sacrifices are like the sensationalists do.
I think that's actually heretical, really. Like, so he's not going to restore animal sacrifices. He's not going to run the world like a political civic ruler or whatnot. I think the millennium is the resurrection of specifically Christians or a certain class of Christian. And then after the millennium is when you have others start to come in.
The Great Judgment and
you
aren't the first and only only historic primo person that have mentioned where during the millennium there will only be believers. Because obviously a critique of Amill and Postmill, they would say, "Oh, so what do you historic primo? How do you guys reconcile unbelievers with in the midst of being with Christ dwelling on earth and stuff like that?" And obviously some historic primos say, well, actually I believe it's only believers in the millennium, during the millennium, and obviously like after that the judgment and so on and so on. But yeah, so you aren't the only one that I have heard of that belief. Now, interesting enough, obviously something that would differ, and maybe we can kind of go back and forth on this type of question where we're talking about the differences. And mainly people wondering, watching. This is mainly more of a learning, I guess you can say, kind of just hearing Rivers' position out, and it's not really a debate. Like, oh, why don't you ask this question? Why don't you lean harder on what you asked him? It's just mainly just more of a dialogue. So your view on the third temple being built. Obviously, when people hear that, they think of dispensationalism and stuff like that. And so I believe I heard you say where obviously dispensationalists would see this as a good thing. Oh, the Jews have their
to be fair to them, they don't all think that, and I think a lot of them would see it as actually being an antichrist temple. They want it to be built simply because they wanted to usher in the return of Jesus.
Right.
Just to be fair. And I think if you're that kind of dispensationalist, I can work with you. If you're the kind of dispensationalist who's like, no, it's going to be a good thing and God's going to delight in animal sacrifices, then I think you're a heretic.
Right. Yeah. Especially yeah. And so where I wouldn't necessarily view the building of the third temple as anything. I don't want to say this. Trying to say this. It's maybe as a relevance as what you would view. If anything, I might view as definitely the end might be near if the third temple is being built. But I wouldn't say this has to mean then Antichrist is coming and so on and so forth. So yeah. Would you say also, whereas now you talked about the differences between kind of the dispensationalists, what you mentioned the tribulation. So obviously dispensationalists, they view the Great Tribulation hasn't happened yet, and it will be 7 years. When I grew up a Pentecostal.
Or 3.5. Some of them think 3.5, but yeah.
Right, yeah, because when I grew up Pentecostal, what I was taught was 7 years total. What in the 3.5 part was, it would be 3.5 after the third temple built, Antichrist has come. The first 3.5 years of the tribulation will be normal kind of thing, and then right after 3.5, that's when the Antichrist will start and making people get the mark of the beast. This is what I was raised with. I'm saying. I'm not saying I hold this now, obviously. And so that's what I was, and obviously, some would put that as it's some. Well, I grew up with people I still in contact now, and where they believe that once the 3.5 years of the good part is kind of done, the 3.5 years of the horror begins. That's when the church gets raptured. But then after that 3.5 years, Christ returns with the church.
Yeah.
So where do you put, obviously, the rapture, the second coming? Do you put them as
when it comes to the tribulation, I don't try and speculate too much about, is it 7, is it 3.5, whatnot. I don't think Revelation is clear enough to know. And as for the rapture, I don't believe in the rapture. Yeah, I don't believe in I think the whole point is that Christians are going to go through the trib and be purified through it and be martyred, and the glory of suffering and stuff. I think that's kind of the whole point of premill for me, is it's like we're called to suffer, we're called to be persecuted by the world, and that's how we glorified. Not this idea of like we're supposed to escape suffering. That's not the way of the cross for me.
Like, so, obviously, me and you
don't believe in a rapture.
Obviously, me and you differ. Where would we put, or would say when the tribulation to put? When is it put it? But obviously, we agree. The church does go through the tribulation. And obviously, because why would you get warnings of the coming of the Antichrist, and stuff like that?
It wouldn't matter. You
warnings out there for a reason, because the church will go through this. So the next question, we already kind of covered that a little bit. How do you differ from? Is there anything else you want to speak on? What do you differ from dispensationalism? Because obviously, again, like hearing the stuff we were talking about, some people, he's actually really just a dispensationalist. Obviously, you're not. But how would you? Was there anything else you want to say that does?
I would just say that, like, just to boil it down to the main differences. Dispensationalists, I think, have a fleshly view of things. Jesus is going to be a fleshly ruler in the sense of like civic power and blah blah blah, and the temple needs to be restored in a literal, physical, fleshly way. Whereas I do agree with the amills in the sense of like, no, it's spiritual. Jesus is a spiritual ruler, ruling a spiritual kingdom. It doesn't have like a capital city and borders and stuff like that. So that's a big difference. And then also just a lot of this comes down to how we understand the Jews. And I agree with dispensationalists that eschatology comes down to the Jews. And I strongly disagree with amill and post-mill people that the Jews are basically irrelevant and no one, they're just like any other people. And I think that's ridiculous. I don't think, I just find that always would bug me about post-millers. Like, you read, I think guys like Doug Wilson actually are of the view that there'll be mass conversion, but a lot of these guys, they're like, oh, the Jews are just like anyone else. Like, who cares? It's like, no.
Yeah.
You can't read Romans. You can't read the Olivet Discourse. You can't, like,
how do you read Paul, like, and just come with a straight face after reading Paul saying, what is the benefit of being a Jew? Don't be prideful, you wild branches that were grafted in the natural branches. Like, there's a whole category. They're called the natural branches, and they're going to come back. Like, how do you read that with a straight face and then say there's nothing else to do?
Romans 11 is one of the most one of the least, what am I trying to say? One of the most ignored passages. People really need to read Romans 11. It is the conclusion to Romans, the argument that Paul's making from 1 to 11 before he then goes on to, like, church matters. And there's just really crucial stuff there. But there's also a certain type of like post-mill guy who is anti-Israel and stuff, who is like, the Jews are this apostate people. They might even say things like, they're the Antichrist. They're Satan's people, blah, blah, blah. But they don't have any belief in a mass conversion. So that's pretty dark. It's like the Jews for 2,000 years and all the way until the very end are basically just going to be entirely bad. And I'm like, I'm saying that, no, what's going on is that they just need to believe in Jesus. And until they do, we're just going to keep playing over this whole story of this world being terrible. And it's all going to reach its crescendo with the trib, and then because that's like the final deception. It's just like, hey, there's the temple, the Messiah's here. But when that comes crashing down, finally they're gonna go, we've made some mistakes. It was Jesus all along, and that's what we're waiting for.
While I tend to my son real quick, can you? I want to ask you one question. This is the one
Mhm.
main question that I think maybe some viewers might have, even people that watch us down the road where it's not live anymore. Um, where do you have anything when it comes to the return of Christ? Is it near? Is it far? Um, you know, where do you put that? Do you have anything in your view that okay? Is it near? Is it near? Are we close to the end? And while
Oh,
you
okay.
go, yeah, while you go into that, I'm going to tend to my son real quick. I might bring him on the stream, who knows? But go
Yeah,
into that
sounds
real
good. I
quick.
got my son out there. I don't know if you can hear him, making baby noises.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear you.
you can hear him.
It's very faint. It's not faint, but
Oh
I
yeah,
thought it was
yeah.
my son first.
Oh yeah. Okay, so in terms of the timeline, this is going to be a long answer, which is fine because you've got to go to your son. And probably the most convincing way I can go through that is just to quote some church fathers. So, to cut a long story short, I do think now I think I might be wrong. Now, a lot of people need to hear me very clearly say that I might be wrong, and this is technically speculation, and I'm open to being wrong. So I'm not saying this is definitely the case. I'm not saying this is the gospel truth, but I do think that it's highly likely that the tribulation and the end of this present age is very soon. I think the I think there's a 50-year window of time. Like so I think the most likely date is 2030 for the end of the trib and the return of Christ. But you could extend that all the way to 2075 because of this whole Jubilee thing. So this is a very long. This is going to be quite a long answer for like why I think all this. But in the early church, and I think implicitly in some New Testament texts like Second Peter, there's this idea that the world is going to last for 7,000 years until the restoration of the cosmos, which is then the eternal eighth day, which is why, eight is like the symbol of infinity. And the tribulation ends once the world is 6,000 years old. And then there is the 1,000th year, seventh day. So the millennium is the Sabbath day. It's the 1,000-year long Sabbath. Okay. And then after that, the world is restored. And then you've got the eternal eighth day with the new heavens and the new earth. Now, where the fathers are getting this from biblically is they allegorize Genesis 1 with the world be made in 6 days, and then there's the Sabbath rest they thought was about the world still being made in 6 days, and every day corresponds to 1,000 years. Of course, there's a few biblical passages that say that for the Lord a day is the 1,000 years. So you've got that, and there's also the Jubilees. So a Jubilee is 50 years, and they thought that the world would last for 120 Jubilees. And then the thing is, the Second Temple Jews thought this. So the book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees teach that the world will last for 7,000 years with the 1,000th year, 7th day, and 120 Jubilees. And many Jews even today think that. And then you've got things like the Babylonian Talmud and Kabbalist writings also divide up that period into sets of 2,000 years. So the first set of 2,000 years is the age of chaos. That's Adam to Abraham. And then you've got 2,000 years from Abraham to the first century. And they said that's the age of the law, the age of Torah. And then 2,000 years from then is what they said was supposed to be the age of the Messiah. This is very interesting. But they said it wasn't because the Jews were too misbehaving and the Messiah never came. That's very fascinating because we think he did. and the exact time when they said he was supposed to. They would have no reason to make this up because the Jews are very desperate to not believe that Jesus is the Messiah. And they're going, you've got texts in the Middle Ages saying the Messiah was supposed to come when Jesus did, but he didn't come, and they have to try and explain why that is.
Mm-hmm.
But so there's text before Jesus came that said it's going to go Adam to Abraham 2,000 years, Abraham to the Messiah 2,000 years, Messiah to the is then 2,000 years, and then a 1,000-year Sabbath, and then the restoration of the world. So you've got a number of Jewish writings say that. You even have Islamic writings say this about the 7,000-year thing. Okay, so in Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, they all have this idea of a 7,000-year division of the world. Now, if you go with the Masoretic texts and you go with their chronology and dates, the world is about to be 6,000 years old. It's about to be 6,000 years from Adam, right? Because if you calculate, how long the world is, which is easily done. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say easily done, but as in like it is doable, because they do say this guy lived for that long, and he lived for that long, and this happened that long ago, and you can actually do the math.
Yeah.
And so based on those calculations, the world is about to be 6,000 years old. That's why young earth creationists say the world is 6,000 years old, because that's the calculations.
Yeah.
Now, that's kind of weird, because if you have all these church fathers say the world will be 6,000 years before the millennium, that's coming up, right, very soon, based on those calculations. And again, that's what
I don't know if you covered
the
that.
Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, other Jewish texts, and even in Islam, and then copiously in the church fathers. So if you don't mind, I just want to quickly quote some of these guys.
Did you
so you
cover
got the
while
epistle
on real
Sorry?
quick why 2030 as well? Or you kind of like
Oh, right. Yeah. The 2030 thing. Okay. Yeah. So the 2030 thing is if it's 2,000 years after Jesus, right? Because if you got 2,000 years from, by the way, it is exact. If you look at the Bible and you do the calculations, it is Abraham was born exactly 2,000 years after Adam was created, and Jesus was born. Jesus died exactly 2,000 years after Abraham. And so that's worth noting already. So 2030 would simply be 2,000 years after Jesus' death, which I calculate to be AD 30. I think he died at the age of 33 years old, was born in 4 BC, and died in AD 30. So 2,000 years after that would be 2030. But also, if you do the Jubilees thing, the Dead Sea Scrolls say that the final Jubilee, the final 50 years, begins in AD 2025. Of course, they didn't say AD, they didn't have that, but the equivalent of our AD 2025, they say, is the final Jubilee. And that seems right to me. So that means that from 2025, you have a 50-year window extending to 2075. And so anywhere in that window would be where the final Jubilee is, and thus the end of the world. So the Dead Sea Scrolls says the stuff as well. Yeah. So as for the church fathers, you have the
quotation. Yep.
Yeah, the Epistle of Barnabas, very important text written in the late 1st century or early 2nd century, was considered scripture by a number of fathers. That says in chapter 15 that the world will be 6,000 years until the 1,000th year Sabbath rest or millennium. Right, because in Hebrews it says that the Sabbath rest is yet to come. There's going to be a mystical Sabbath, a long Sabbath rest, and then Revelation says the millennium is 1,000 years. So we just add those together and say that they're talking about the same thing. That's Barnabas. Justin Martyr, in AD 155-ish, he said that for the Lord a day is 1,000 years, seemingly riffing off this idea. And then he said that those who believe in Jesus Christ will dwell for 1,000 years after Jesus returns. Irenaeus in AD 180 said that in as many days as the world was made, in so many thousand years shall it be concluded. And he goes on to say that means that the world will last for 6,000 years or 6,000-year days until the hallowed 7th day, which is the 1,000-year long millennium. So he says that in Against Heresies, book 5, chapters 30 to 38. Hippolytus, writing in about AD 200, says that the world will last for 6,000 years, and then there'll be a 1,000-year-long Sabbath. He writes that in, that's recorded in the second fragment of his commentary on Daniel. Commodianus in AD 250 again says that he says we will become immortal when the 6,000 years are accomplished. He says that on Christian Discipline, chapter 35. St. Cyprian says that the first 7 days in the divine arrangement contain 7,000 years, and Treatises 11. And so he also talked about this idea of 7,000 years, 1,000 years Sabbath. Victorianus in between AD 250 and 260 says that the true and just Sabbath should be observed in the 7th millenary of years. Wherefore, to those 7 days, the Lord attributed to each 1,000 years. He says the true Sabbath will be in the 7th millenary of years when Christ with his elect shall reign. That's he says that on the creation of the world. Methodius in about 290 AD, he says that again, he talks about this 7,000 years. He says that after 6,000 years, all Christians will be resurrected immortal. Just to note, so we're seeing the idea of the 6,000 years and the 1,000-year Sabbath, but these guys are all saying that Christians will be resurrected and be immortal in the millennium. So this is also a consistent thought. A specifically Christian resurrection in the millennium. Christians reign immortal for 1,000 years. That raises questions about what happens after that millennium, which, we can leave that or whatever. But I think it's worth noting that they are making a distinction between when Christians are being resurrected and having their reward, inheriting the millennial kingdom. As for non-Christians, right. Yeah. So then you've got Lactantius in around about AD 303 to 311. He talks about this quite extensively, very extensively, in Divine Institutes, book 7. I've got whole paragraphs here, but I don't want to quote them all because it'd take too long. But he says the world will last for 6 ages, each being 1,000 years. So 6,000 years. Once those 6 ages are complete, the consummation shall take place, and there will then be a 1,000-year-long Sabbath that Christians will be in, and righteousness will reign for 1,000 years. And a Christian, so Christians will be in that. I'm just trying to paraphrase this long paragraph I've got here. Christians will reign for 1,000 years after the world is 6,000 years long. And then even Hilary of Poitiers in about AD 350-ish, he also says that and he says this in his commentary on Matthew chapter 17. He says that the world will last for 6,000 years before the 1,000-year Sabbath. So these are some, this is just some church fathers. As you can see, this is this is like some really heavy hitters talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I've got a whole bunch of other quotes from the Didache, Irenaeus, Hippolytus, Tertullian. I think that's it, actually. Well, that's all I've got. About I thought I had someone else. Oh, no, and Cyril of Jerusalem, talking about the Great Tribulation and the Antichrist and the construction of the Third Temple. So, just to remind you, Hippolytus, Irenaeus, the Didache, Cyril of Jerusalem. These are some big names. Yeah. They're saying like almost 2,000 years ago. So these aren't like, dispensationalists who read the Schofield Bible. These are guys like almost 2,000 years ago saying the Messiah is going to come. The Antichrist is going to come. The Jews will think he's the Messiah. He will build a third temple, and it will usher in a great tribulation. And when that's over, then the millennium will happen, and this is all going to take place once the world is 6,000 years old. Now, here's the thing. This is irrefutable. I'm not making this up. I've given people who are listening the citations. As for the temple stuff, the Didache, this is chapter 16. Irenaeus, you've got Against Heresies, chapter 5. Hippolytus, He talks about this in his book that's literally called The Antichrist, and his book that's called A Discourse on the End of the World. Tertullian in Against Marcion, chapter 5, and then Cyril of Jerusalem in his Catechetical Lecture 15. This is where you find this stuff. The thing is, this is the weird thing. If you calculate that the world is around about 6,000 years old, based on the Masoretic text, which is obviously the most reliable, and these guys are saying the world will last for 6,000 years, and then there's a tribulation with a third temple and a Jewish Messiah, and then there's the millennium. Isn't it really weird that as we're about 6,000 years old, the Jews just so happen to return to Palestine, like the fathers said they would? By the way, also like John Henry Newman, by the way, of all people, prophesied. John Henry Newman, the Anglican who became a Roman Catholic cardinal, he said in the 19th century, the Jews are going to return to the state, to Palestine. They will build a third temple. The Antichrist will come. They'll call him the Messiah, and this will usher in the end of the world. This is John Henry Newman saying this. So you got these guys saying it. It just so happens that around about that period of time, they established the state of Israel. It just so happens that around that time, they've knocked out Syria, they've knocked out Libya, they're about to knock out Iran, they've knocked out Iraq, they're about to wipe out Hamas. Eventually all their enemies will be vanquished, and there'll be nothing to stop them from building a third temple. They have been crystal clear that they want to build a third temple, and as all that's happening, it looks like we might be on the brink of a third world war with China and Russia, and they're in alliance with Iran. And then the other thing is, something I forgot to mention, is that Hippolytus Irenaeus and John Henry Newman and Cyril of Jerusalem all said that the man who builds the third temple, who they are going to call the Messiah, will be a Gentile ruler of the new Rome. And it so happens that you've got Trump making it basically his mission in life to be Israel's attack dog. And he himself has said he wants to build a third temple. And his Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, said on camera that he wants to build a third temple. And in Israel, they're making freaking coins with Trump's face on it, calling him King Cyrus, saying that he's going to build the third temple for them. And you have all these rabbis prophesying that Trump is going to build a third temple. And then, of course, then you also connect that to the fact that Trump, is like obviously Antichrist material. So it's freaky. It's the thing is, this is speculation. I'm not saying this is definitely the truth, but I would say that when I started seeing this, and I wasn't doing it on my own, I was doing it with my mate Abraham, I did those videos with. When we started seeing this stuff, it's like, we knew that if we talked about it, you're going to have all these people go, this is dangerous, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be speculating, you should keep these thoughts to yourself, and blah, blah, blah. We're more thinking, if this turns out to be true, it would be very wrong to not talk about it.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing is I'm saying, look, you can't just ignore this stuff. You've got these fathers saying this 6,000 year thing, saying there's going to be a tribulation, saying there's going to be a reconstruction of the third temple, blah, blah, blah. You've got that. You've got this stuff happening politically around that, like virtually exactly when the father said it would happen. It would be wrong to not maybe just point that out. Like, I haven't made it my whole life's mission. I've only made 3 videos about it. And they were just parts, like, as in it was one video cut into 3 parts.
Yeah.
I'm not running around the streets. I'm not making it my whole life, my whole ministry. But I'm just saying, hey, maybe it's good to just say, hey, maybe like, it's just worth saying. It's worth talking about, just in case.
Well, since you brought it up,
So
what is your response to someone who say, hey, didn't Christ command us not to speculate? But also, how does and obviously, how do you differ from the common televangelist that will predict this date? Like I think you mentioned off camera. They'll say, it's September 12th, 2026.
Yeah. They're like, the rapture is going to happen on September the thingy-majiggy. They tell it wrong. And they're like, oh, wait, no, we should be using the Julian calendar. So it's actually October. Yeah. I think that stuff is goofy. And no, I actually don't think that Jesus told us not to speculate. I think he actually implicitly thinks that we should speculate, because he tells us the signs of the end. He says, like, these are the signs of the end. Be on guard. Look out for them. And he says things like, when you see the abomination of desolation, then you know that the end is nigh. I think the abomination of desolation is the construction of the third temple, in line with how the number of fathers saw that. And so I actually think he wants us to look out for it. John Henry Newman, of course, he also says it's a Christian duty to look for the signs of the end and to look for the signs of the Antichrist coming. Mm-hmm. So I don't agree. I think Revelation, with the Olivet Discourse, gives us the signs, gives us the clues so that we will be on the lookout. We can't know an exact date. I mean, I'm not going around saying he's going to come back on September the 2nd, 2030 at exactly 3:15 p.m. New Zealand Standard Time. I'm not doing that.
Or like
I'm just saying, the only reason I'm saying 2030 is I've been very clear about it. I'm just saying 2030 happens to be 2,000 years after Christ was crucified. It's not like, well, okay, actually, there are other reasons for 2030, which we won't get into because they're very technical. You can watch the videos I did on my channel if you want to get into the 2030 stuff. But there actually are other reasons about calculating prophecies and things. But we're not going to say that. But the other thing is, people always go, you can't know the day or the hour. No, what he's saying is, unbelievers, the bulk of mankind, it's going to come like a thief in the night, and it's going to take them off guard. But in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 4, St. Paul literally says, he says this from verse 3, while people are saying peace and security, destruction will come upon them suddenly, like labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you, brothers, are not in darkness, so that this day shall not overtake you like a thief in the night. For you are all sons of light, sons of the day. So he's literally saying it's not going to be a shock to you because you're on the lookout, for starters. But yeah, I do think it's good to try and look at the signs. Now, and one final thing to say is, when people say things like, well, no one knows the day or the hour. Again, not like I'm saying I know the day or the hour. I'm not giving you dates. I'm not giving you anything like that.
You're very generalizing of the year.
Very general. And I'm giving a 50-year window. I think after 2075, if nothing's happened, at that point, you're probably just going to have to say that whole 6,000 year thing didn't turn out to be true. Because you've got a 50-year window of that's the final Jubilee, according to Dead Sea Scrolls. And I think also according to a pretty fair estimate of the dates.
Now, if you're still alive, would you change your
sorry?
If you're still alive in 2075, or at least
I would change. I'm not holding. This isn't gospel truth. I'm not holding onto this too strongly. I'm just saying it's like it would be silly not to talk about this, and it'd be silly not to like be open minded about this possibility. But with the day and the no one knows the day or the hour thing, I feel like when people say that, what they're kind of suggesting, which I don't think any Christian really thinks, is they're making it seem like Jesus could plausibly come at any point. And I think that is obviously false. Now, I'm going to need to unpack that a little. What I mean by this is, I'm 100% certain. I mean, okay, let's just say 90% for the sake of I'm 90% certain that Jesus is not going to return today. And tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow. Why do I say that? Because Jesus himself said, these are the signs of my return. And Revelation says these are the signs of his return. And those things haven't happened yet. I don't think Jesus is going to come back on some random Tuesday at 3 p.m. Like, everything's normal. Everyone's going about their normal lives. There isn't World War III. There isn't a third time. It's just normal every day. Everything's normal. And then Jesus just, hey, I'm back now. It's not. That's just not what the New Testament is showing. If you read Thessalonians, both of them, if you read the Olivet Discourse and the Synoptic Gospels, and if you read Revelation, and certainly if you read the Church Fathers, they are expecting there will be a consummation. There will be a climax of history. There will be a great tribulation. There will be an abomination of desolation that's set up. There will be an antichrist. He will sit down in the temple of God. And You know what I mean? It's going to come to a conclusion. There is a story.
Mhm.
It's not going to be like a weird French art house film where like it just ends, at like some random moment. It's not going to be like the end of The Sopranos where it just cuts to a black screen. That's a bit mean. The Sopranos did actually, it did reach a conclusion, but there is a climax, and then also the Jews. What about Romans 11? What's going to happen to the Jews? There needs to be. That story needs to be told. Otherwise, you're just going to say that for 2,000 years, basically all of the Jews rejected Christ. No, we're looking for these things happening. And so for me, since the Jews haven't mass converted, the abomination of desolation hasn't been built. The Antichrist hasn't come, or at least he hasn't revealed himself yet. Or you know what I mean. It's not super obvious who he is yet.
Right.
For these reasons and others, I just don't think Jesus is going to come back today. I don't think he's going to come back tomorrow. Because these things have not happened yet. And so I think even Christians who say stuff like that, well, no one knows the day or the hour. I think they know. Surely everyone knows that, right? Surely every Christian has a hunch that Jesus doesn't just come back on Monday morning for some reason. Like there is going to be like a crescendo to history. You know, I think that's pretty obvious they're going to be like that.
Emails, you know what I mean? I think, like I said, even for me, even though I have a hope for an optimistic end, but at least even for me, like you mentioned, I agree with. Obviously, I hold to what you hold to as well. When the Apostle Paul is in Romans 11, speaking of the coming one day of the natural branches being grafted back in, a mass conversion of ethnic Jews. And obviously, I believe I believe ethnic Jews that are coming in now. I think that's a foreshadow of what's to come. Obviously, there's believers today. I know many, even Joe, young Anglican. He's ethnically Jew.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So anyway, obviously, these are things that what did Paul say? When the fullness of Gentile comes in, then this will happen. Before the Christ returns.
And here's the thing. So if you can agree that there needs to be a climax, there's going to be a crescendo. Which I would just assume that almost all Christians just do actually think that, even if they're saying no one knows the day or the hour, they know,
right? That there has to be at least something.
He's not coming. There's no real possibility that Jesus is going to come back in the next 5 minutes. But then all you have to say is, okay, well, when those signs do happen, we're all probably going to be thinking, all right, well, he's going to be here in the next 7 years, right? Like. They build a third temple. There's World War III. There's nuclear bombs. There's a mass conversion of Jews. You're probably going to be going, well, I think Jesus is going to come back very soon. So that I think that's how the New Testament presents things.
So now, I definitely wanted to get to the point where let's obviously. People watching, you have noticed that I have had disagreements with River. But let's just say, what does this mean then, River? 2030, or like you mentioned, I know you have a 50-year gap window, but it's still even 2075. Even me, I was born in 1998. Lord willing, if I don't die from any cause I don't know about, I don't know what the Lord has for me. I can still very much be alive in 2075. So. What does this mean? How does this affect gospel preaching and just the gospel in general? So I don't know if you want to go into that. Where does this mean?
It doesn't affect the I guess it gives more. What would be the word?
Urgency.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. More urgency to preaching the gospel. Because it's not like, well, this guy, this relative, I'm sure in the next 50 years he'll it could be more like, well, we got a limited amount of time to try and convert them and that kind of thing. So there's definitely that. And by the way, one other thing to say is a lot of pushback I get. People go, we should be expecting Jesus to come back at any point. Wait, no, sorry. No, I think I've got I've already talked about that. As in, a lot of people are saying it's dangerous to say Jesus is coming back, and it's like even if it's wrong, it's not really dangerous because all it's doing is giving you more urgency. So there's more urgency in preaching the gospel. But the other thing is, and this is probably the most controversial thing I'll say. Well, we're not done yet. We don't know.
Yeah.
We even talked about what I think is going to happen after the millennium, which is very controversial.
man.
But I think that if this stuff is true, and if you're someone listening to this and thinking this could be true, it does mean that I think you need to have a real think about Israel and the state of Israel and Donald Trump and stuff like that. Because my outlook is that the state of Israel is evil and is going to be responsible for the tribulation, and that if Trump is who I think he very well might be, that he's not someone you want to be hitching your wagon to. Now I know that's very controversial, and a lot of conservative Christians love Trump and stuff. And I'm not anti-Trump because I'm like woke and I'm like, he's not PC. It's like, it's stuff like that. And
right. Yeah.
I think you don't want to be on the wrong side of this. And the thing is, what we're told about the Antichrist and the beast is that he deceives Christians. And a lot of conservative Christian type people, they think the Antichrist is going to be like some sort of Klaus Schwab or Barack Obama, like liberal. It's like, dude, the woke, like anti-Christian atheist type people, they're already deceived. Like they don't need an Antichrist.
They're the obvious ones. Like, okay, they're obviously wrong.
I would be worried about Christians being duped. Christians being duped by someone. And, again, this is controversial, but I don't really care anymore. I do think that Christians, I think there's already fact that Christians have been duped by Trump. Sorry, I don't know if you're a Trump supporter.
No.
I don't mean to offend, but
I'm obviously of one of those people that, okay, just because, and this is obviously speaking from an American, just because you might disagree with me on our border crisis, on how we should deal with immigration, I'm not going to say you're not a Christian. You know what I mean? So when it comes to politics, I'm not disfellowshipping someone because they disagree with me on something.
Yeah, but I think they do by him already, because I think that he's quite clearly a liar, a adulterer, a just terribly immoral man, and friends of Jeffrey Epstein, and I think he's neck deep in all this Israel Mossad stuff. I think he's just bad news. But I'm saying that, man, this could even be even worse. It could be even worse than we're like if Trump builds the third temple and it turns out that he was like this. I mean, it's bad. It's like you don't want to. So you don't want to, when Jesus comes back, if he was that guy, you don't want to be wearing a MAGA hat. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, you could be duped.
What is your, again, like kind of bringing this back to the gospel and just an urgency of preaching the gospel, but also like you mentioned, believers themselves. Okay, this what makes if one, let's say, shares your view, and like you mentioned, where you get the urgency to preach the gospel. Also, not only that, just to self-reflect and to make sure your calling is true, right? So, what would you say to believers as, okay, if you're seeing what I'm seeing, then this is even more urgency, just to even also make sure our relationship with God is what it's supposed to be. I don't know if you want to speak to that as well.
Well, the urgency thing, is just that, like, everyone probably assumes that they've got decades ahead of them. But if it turned out you only had 3 years, or I don't know, 5 years or whatever ahead of you, you might want to make some more changes or just be a bit more serious about stuff. A lot of people are like, I'm sure that this habitual sin I have will sort itself out by the time I'm 80. What if you've only got 5 years? Then you need to get to work now. But I think just another message here is that, and this is part of a premill outlook, is the message of the tribulation, like on a meta level, like what's this all about? What's this saying? I think what is Revelation saying morally, like not just about what it's saying will happen in terms of like the specific historical
Like
details, but
chronologically.
what it's saying on like a theological level, I think what it's saying is don't hitch your wagon to the world. Don't hitch your wagon to Caesar. This is just a very obvious teaching throughout the New Testament. Jesus is Lord, not Caesar. The world is evil. It is run by the devil. There is a ruler of the world. There are archons and elemental spirits and principalities and powers who are oppressing us. And the world is under their sphere of influence, and we can't have anything to do with the world. You can't be a Christian and not hate the world, as the New Testament says. So be wary of if you have hitched yourself to the world. If a worldly leader has come along and you think that he's like a savior figure, he's gonna save Western civilization or whatever, I think be wary of that. I think we're told to be very concerned about that. That's sounding like the world. That's sounding like the flesh.
Yeah.
That's sounding like the opposite, the antithesis of Jesus. They wanted him to be a worldly ruler who would kill the Romans with the sword and stuff. And his whole point was that's not what he's like. The kingdom of heaven is a spiritual kingdom. He's not here to run a civic kingdom with borders and it's run by the sword.
Yeah.
So I just think that, you got to be careful of that kind of thing. And I'm seeing a lot of Christians make this mistake. A lot of these Christian nationalists, man, there's a whole horde of people like that. Or these Christians who are obnoxious online with their profile pictures like a MAGA hat and like the Chad glasses. And they think that Trump is like the savior of Western civilization. And like it's these sorts of people. These are the people I'm like, bro, you might be duped. You may have fallen for something very dark. I'm just saying, be wary that you're not doing that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, do you kind of want to finish with presenting the gospel, and then again, if you have time, we could go to we have a couple questions here.
Yeah, we've got three. I think we've got three questions. Yep, I'll do that, and then we can look at these questions. Yeah. Well, the gospel is the good news that God has a plan to fix the world, and He, in a sense, has done that or has initiated that in Jesus. And eventually he's going to do that for all the cosmos through Jesus. So the good news is that, well, I guess to present the good news, you have to start with the bad news a little bit. And the bad news is fairly self-explanatory. You look around the world and it's filled with horrific suffering. We get sick and we die. Children die of leukemia. There's war. People are evil and hateful. We're evil and hateful. We sin. We just can't seem to get anything right. Even as hard as you try to be righteous, you still keep screwing up. People betray you. People do horrible things to each other. They kidnap people. I don't want to say the words because it triggers the algorithms badly, but we do unspeakable things to each other. The world is a mess. This is death and sickness and sin and evil and hatred and lies and betrayals everywhere. And we're also quite obviously cut off from God to a certain degree, right? Like we feel his divine hiddenness, that we feel that there is a rift in our relationship. We can't hear him speak to us. Sometimes we can. I have before, but like in your day-to-day life, he's not walking with you in the garden, right? So there's a problem. Very clearly, that's a problem. And the good news is that what God has done is he's come to fix the problem. And he's done that by sending his son, Jesus Christ, who is God, because he's one being with the Father, onto earth, and he's become a human being. So he's fully man and fully God. And what that has meant is that creation and the creator are fused or united in Jesus. Like you got the charts with the two circles who meet in the middle. Jesus is like that. He's God and man meeting together in himself. And what he's done is he has shown us the way to live. The only way to live that can make some kind of difference in the way the world is. And what that is love. Love your neighbor. Forgive your neighbor. And don't retaliate. because he's saying that this whole world is this endless cycles of violence and retribution. And he's saying, when someone slaps you, turn the other cheek. When they sin against you, forgive them. Just stop the cycle and work on yourself. Don't worry about the speck in his eye. Worry about the plank in your eye. And as for who to love, you love your neighbor. That means the guy right there, the one, whoever's next to you or in front of you, he's your neighbor and you love him. So he shows us the way to live, but also he deals with sin in that he lives a perfectly righteous life on our behalf because we can't. And he offers up that righteous life as a pleasing sacrifice to the Father in our stead. Because as the Son of Man, as the second Adam, he represents all of mankind. And so when he is perfectly righteous, he represents humanity as the perfect righteous man. And so that means that God can now impute, so to speak, that righteousness to us. Although I don't really like that language, but what it means is that we participate in his righteousness. We're clothed under the umbrella of his righteousness because he's our representative. And that happens, and that comes to its crescendo on the cross, because the cross is the ultimate act of self-giving love. He offers up his life as a righteous, perfect sacrifice to the Father, which the Father lovingly accepts. And then he dies, and that's unspeakably deep, that the only way that God can fix the world is if God becomes a man capable of dying so that he can die with us. But then what happens is Jesus passes through death and is resurrected to immortal life. He's not resuscitated. He's resurrected and his body is transformed so that he's immortal. He's indestructible. He cannot die. He's completely immortal. And so now, for the first time in history, there is a part of the cosmos that is immortal. Because before then, everything was mortal. Every rock can be destroyed. Every plant can be uprooted. Every person can be killed. Now there is something in the cosmos, Jesus, who is immortal and everlasting. And just as his righteousness was vicarious for us and represented us, what he's done now is he's enabled us to participate also in his everlasting immortal life. And he's promised that one day that will happen, and where all the cosmos will be subsumed into his resurrection. That's why he says, I am the resurrection. Not I bring the resurrection, I am the resurrection. We will participate in his resurrection, and then the whole cosmos will be immortalized. There'll be no more sin, no more death, no more suffering. We'll participate in his righteousness and in his immortality and in his sonship, because he's the Son of God. And when we are all included into him, when we're united into him, we are also, just as we're united to his righteousness and we're united to his immortality, we're also united to his sonship. And so the whole cosmos will become the direct child of God. And so that's the rescue mission. But how that happens, though, is you do need to repent of your sins, because you need to turn from the ways of the world, and you need to have faith in Jesus. You need to, and because faith is the means by which you come under his umbrella. It's the means by which you are fused and united to him. Faith is how you reach out and you grab onto the hem of his garment to receive his immortalizing power, like the woman with the issue of blood who held onto the hem of his garment. Faith is how you reach out and grab hold of him and say, I want to be united to you. And so we need to have faith in Jesus for this to happen. And so that way also it's not by our works. We don't earn our way into heaven, because the whole point is that we can't earn our way into heaven. The whole point is we need to be rescued. And the whole point is that Jesus alone can do it. And so faith is simply just how we cling on to him and say, I want what you've got. Like, I want what you've done. I want to be united to you. And then once you have faith in him, then we have the sure hope that in the world to come, we're going to be resurrected and live forever and ever and ever and ever as God's beloved children, walking with God, seeing him face to face, talking to him, and you'll be without sin. You'll never sin again. No one else ever will. Everyone will be in perfect harmony and love. And there'll be no more death, no more suffering, no more pain, no more crying. Every tear will be wiped away, and all things will be made new. You'll
Amen.
reunite with your loved ones, and the whole world will be in harmony, and all things will be reconciled to God. It's an unfathomably amazing thing that's to come. So that's essentially the gospel. Yeah.
Amen. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Well, all right. Let's get to these questions. All right. So we have where are we? IFBs.
Independent fundamentalist Baptists. Yeah.
Audio. Oh, that's when I asked for the audio. Okay. So he said, question. How is it that everyone is described as receiving the mark of the beast by force, Revelation 13:16, but those who receive it are to be punished, 14:9? Everyone will be punished for it? Question mark.
Well, by that point, Christians or the elect who aren't part of the beast system have escaped, I think, or so like it's given to you by force for those who have already remained in the system, if that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, like with this stuff, we can't know for sure. Like I don't know for sure what the mark of the beast is, but I'm sure it'll make sense when it happens. But my reading of it is just, yeah, for those who have stuck around, it's given to them by force because they were still there, you know.
And what do you mean by stuck around? Because obviously, I think you mentioned before, Christians aren't raptured during the tribulation, right? Obviously.
Yeah, but Christians check out of the system. Let's say there's a Nazi rally
go off
and
grid type of
Hitler
thing?
forces everyone at the Nazi rally to have a tattoo on them. It's like, yeah, he forced the tattoo, but you were at the rally.
Yeah.
You know, like that's all I can really say because I don't know what the mark of the beast is. I don't know what this is going to be like, but that's my reading. And so Christians are not at the rally. Christians can't receive it by force because they're not sticking around for that, as in like they're hiding or
right,
or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Or yeah. I again, I just don't really know. But the point is, I wouldn't be. Some people get worried about. A lot of people get very worried about mistakenly taking the mark of the beast. Now, it is true that everyone will be mistakenly taking, as no one's going to think it's the mark of the beast when they take it. Obviously, otherwise they wouldn't take it.
You're gonna think it's
but
a good thing. Yeah.
I don't think you need to be worried like, oh, I got the COVID vaccine because I thought that it would, vaccinate COVID. Oh, have I taken the mark? It's not going to be like that.
Yeah.
It's going to be something that I think you do have culpability for. Even if it's done by force. So like I said, like let's just imagine that, yeah, you're at a Nazi rally and Hitler says everyone has. I mean, I'll give you another example. Like in Jonestown, Jim Jones, this evil demon, he tells everyone there to drink the Kool-Aid laced with cyanide and to kill themselves, and 1,000 people die. But the thing is, it was done by force. So before he calls everyone into the meeting room, and everyone is surrounded by armed guards with AK-47s. And it's very clear, if you don't take the Kool-Aid, we're going to shoot you. And so it's given to them by force, but at the same time, as far as we can understand, because you can hear the recording of what happened, everyone did do it willingly. Like everyone went up, they queued up, and they drank the Kool-Aid. And of course, about a third of the people who died were children. And so parents willingly poisoned their own children or poisoned their elderly parents or whatever. And so it was forced because Jim Jones had manipulated people to do it, and there were armed guards, and it was quite clear that you're going to die one way or the other. But at the same time, you're culpable for it because you were hanging out with Jim Jones because you went with him to Jonestown. You idiot.
Right.
You fool. You signed up for this. How did you think it was going to go? You're going to go hang out with Jim Jones in Jonestown in the middle of the jungle. How do you think this was going to end? So I think that's the idea. So it's going to be something that you're very much culpable for. It's not going to be like they give you something in your sleep and you're like, what? I didn't consent to this. No, you're going to be culpable for it. So I wouldn't be freaking out about a lot of these guys. They like to scaremonger and be like, oh no, the COVID vaccine could be the mark. No. I'm just saying that just to ease people's nerves a bit. And I think there's a lot of manipulative sort of tactics that people use. Yeah.
I take it more as a spiritual / symbolic view as Mark of the Beast. I feel like it's just those who are with the world and follow the world have the mark, and obviously those who are with
Yeah,
Christ.
it could just be a metaphor as well.
Right.
'Cause,
Yeah. All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
So
totally.
we have Apostolic Anglican question: is Islam or the papacy going to play a role in bringing about the Antichrist?
I don't think so. No. Of course, a lot of people thought the Pope was Antichrist and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
No. I think that the Antichrist and the beast. This is all a state of Israel sort of thing. This whole thing is zeroing in not on Roman Catholicism, which is this, you know, Christian movement that sprung up hundreds of years after Christianity and stuff. No. I think this is the climax to the biblical story. And so it's not about Roman Catholicism or Islam, which was, founded like 600 years after Christ or however long it was. This is stuff that is in the Bible coming to its crescendo. And so the Antichrist sort of system is, if it's hinging on something like that, it's hinging on the Jews. It's hinging on their final deception. They think this guy's the Messiah. He's actually the Antichrist. They think they've built the third temple. Jesus is actually the temple. Blah blah blah. I think it's that kind of thing. And that's how the father seems to have seen it, and that's how John Henry Newman saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, question: how can Christ be reigning now, and yet the devil reign in another sense?
Well, it is a mystery. It's a mystery. You hold the two things in tension, like we hold everything in tension.
Mm-hmm.
We say that God is almighty, and yet the world isn't the way He wants it to be. We say that whatever He wills comes to pass, but we know that He doesn't will people to get raped and murdered, and that happens all the time. Like there's the whole Christianity is all about mounting tensions. We say that God came to His people, and His people rejected Him. We say that his crucifixion, He was crucified to death, was the greatest victory ever achieved by man. Like there's Christianity is really about tensions. Even the Old and New Testaments are in tension with each other, and so it's strange. It's like God is almighty, Christ is reigning over all, but yet there's archons. It's the same issue really as the problem of suffering in a way. It's like, how can an almighty God allow His worlds to be oppressed by archons, by evil spirits? How can an almighty God allow the fall to have happened? And blah blah blah. I don't know. So but the thing is, you read the New Testament, and it's very clear that Christ is Lord and He's reigning now. It's also very clear that there's the God of this world, and there's a ruler of the world, and there's still in power, and there's still elemental spirits and stuff. You can escape their dominion through faith in Christ, which means that you circumnavigate their oppression. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
But let me give some kind of answer though, which is that Christ is reigning through the church, and the world is still under the dominion of the archons, the elemental spirits, the principalities and powers.
Yeah,
that's their dominion. Christ is reigning through the church, but also on an extended level, God is still almighty, and everything lives and moves and has its being in Christ, and He's in all and through all, and
it's not the same reign. Like the devil is not reigning in the same sense as Christ is now. You know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, all right. I think we got through the questions. Well, is there anything you wanted to cover, River, that maybe you wanted to cover that we didn't get to?
No, I think that's everything. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, thank you very much for this, dude. I had a good time. Yeah. I hope people listening learned something from it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I said, obviously there's disagreement, but I definitely I think any believer can appreciate a sense of urgency for the gospel, even if you disagree with River's take, which obviously I have disagreements with. Obviously, we have agreements, obviously within historic premill, but obviously the sense of urgency for the gospel, but also, like I said, also even for us as believers, to really examine ourselves as when we're called to biblically to examine ourselves. But yeah. All right, guys. That is it, and I will see you in the next live. Stay tuned. Actually, I have a live coming. I think it's on the 11th, with 3 other guys. It's going to be on prayers and sacramentals and stuff like that. I think it's going to be a fun live. So yeah, stay tuned. And say, God bless.